right, so Jonathan, today we're going to talk about what buyers should know about having home inspections.
Okay.
And our team does tons of transactions every year. We see home inspections happening from the buyer side, we see them negotiating from the seller side. So let's dive in and talk about what you should know as a buyer buying a house and what you get out of having a home inspection and how that process works.
Absolutely.
So a buyer wants to write an offer. How do they get a home inspection? Is it automatic? Is it something that you have to write in? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's definitely something you have to write in. And we encourage all our clients to get home inspections, but just in competitive situations, not everyone can.
Sure.
But I mean, it's right there in the offer. But yeah, you check it and then you can write, within how many days. I usually write in 15 days. And then you go from there. And I always ask my clients, like, would you like to pick someone, or we have a list of people we can recommend?
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, and what you're mentioning is on the offer to purchase, there's standard language in the offer. It's a state approved form that says, here is the inspection contingency. So you talk with the buyer, you say, I want to select this box, which allows the buyer the opportunity to get an inspection to be completed within 14 or 15 days.
mhm.
And that basically, if the offer is accepted, the next step immediately after the offer getting accepted is now the buyer goes and schedules the home inspection.
Mhm.
So when they're writing the offer and they've written in the home inspection contingency, then what? They get it accepted, they go to schedule it. What's the next step for the buyer?
So they attend the home inspection. Do you,
Yeah.
do you like to go to yours? I
Um,
try to go as much as I can.
I mean, I don't like to go, but but you might like to go.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I loved going because I'm like, oh, I learned so much stuff. But then, like, you go to so many, and I guess it's not always the same, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say just at the point I'm at with my career, I see probably over 100 inspection reports a year
Mm,
from the listing side and the buyer side combined for everybody on our team, and so
yeah,
I have a pretty good idea at this point of what to expect in an inspection report
sure.
based on the age of the house, based on things that were previously disclosed. I don't see too many surprises anymore,
Right.
but that doesn't mean I don't see surprises. They sometimes do come up.
Hmm.
And when there is a surprise, there's something that's found in the inspection that is unexpected.
Hmm.
Is that something that the buyer can automatically say, let's get this taken care of, seller, you pay for it, or what are their rights to then get those items fixed?
I wish. I mean, that would be awesome if they could just go in and say, "Hey, I want you to fix all this stuff for me," but
Yeah.
it's just part of the negotiation. So, it depends. Like when you write it in, if you write the right to cure by the seller,
Okay.
and so yeah, it gives them the option to fix it. It's like,
And that right to cure, so that's another line in the offer to purchase. So you write in, I want the
mhm,
inspection,
mhm,
and you write in, does the seller have the right to cure? That's an option the buyer has.
mhm,
Although I'll say 99% of the time, the seller does have the right to cure,
yeah,
which means that in the event a defect is found, a defect being something that impacts the structural integrity of the premises or the health and safety of the occupants. So think
mhm,
of something big like mold or asbestos or a bad roof or a leaky foundation or
mhm, yeah,
funky wiring, something that's actually a defect, and the seller has the right to cure that defect in order for the buyer to move forward. And the
mhm,
buyer can't just say, that scares me that what was found in the inspection, I want to walk away. They've
right,
given the seller the right to cure that item and to be able to fix it in order to move forward.
exactly.
Yeah. So the inspector does the inspection. That takes about, let's say, somewhere between 2 to 4 hours, depending on how big the house is, how old it is, and how well or not it's been maintained.
Mhm.
And then what? Do they get something in writing from the inspector that gives them a summary of the house?
Yeah, so now I like love the digital reports. Like most inspectors I work with will give you a nice PDF and it'll list
Yep.
like the defects, some stuff that might need maintenance in the future. One of the ones I use, I love that he says it's probably time to start budgeting for a new roof or
Yeah.
siding. He doesn't really scare them by like, you're gonna need a roof, but he's like, within 5 years you'll probably need a new roof.
Yeah.
And that's just great. So that's why when I go to the inspection, I show up when the inspector says, but it's usually the last hour of the inspection, and they'll usually go over everything in the report.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome, and that's a really good point to note that the inspection, the purpose of the inspection isn't just to call out here's all the defects with the house. It's
hmm
also to educate the home buyer on how to maintain the home. So they talk about things such as here's how you change the filter in your
yeah,
HVAC system, or here's how you work your electrical panel, and here's the things just to understand about those things in the house. And one thing that recently changed about the inspection report too is that there is required now for home inspectors to
Mhm.
contain a summary page.
Yeah.
And this is actually a state law that just passed over the, I want to say it was over the past couple of months. It may have been
Mhm.
longer than that. But now the summary page is something that the buyers get. So they're not, panicking, paging through 50 plus pages of an inspection
They're
report.
so long, the reports.
Yeah, which is super overwhelming.
Yeah.
They get a nice succinct summary page which says, here is a summary of the defects.
Mhm.
So here are the defects listed on the top, typically in red font to call attention to them.
Mhm.
And that's what the buyer knows that they have the opportunity to negotiate. And then there'll be a section that says, here's maintenance items like clean out your gutters,
Mhm.
trim back the trees, for example. And then there's the items to watch, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
And is it correct that the buyers don't have the right to negotiate those maintenance items or options that they have that are maybe cosmetic that are shown in the inspection report, or what can they actually ask to be fixed?
Well, I mean, legally it's defects, but I've negotiated stuff that weren't. It's just how the deal goes. It's like it's all up for negotiation. So I've seen some little gosh, I'm just trying to think of one recently that I saw. Oh, the fireplace. We wrote in after the inspection they wanted a visual and not inspection. They wanted proof that the fireplace worked.
Oh, sure.
And so they they just got a video of them turning the fireplace on.
Nice.
So that was just like
Quick and
one.
easy. Yeah, well,
But then there's been
the inspectors don't test those additional things.
Yeah.
They're not a fireplace specialist. They're not a
Right.
pool specialist. So sometimes the inspector will recommend that there's another specialist that comes out that
Mhm.
further understands or has a deeper understanding of those items so that those can be checked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that happen too for cracked tile, for example, on the
Mhm.
listing side. So technically, the buyer has no right to ask for the cracked tile to be fixed because it's cosmetic, it's not defective. But sometimes the sellers are just willing to do it. They'll
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I didn't realize this was cracked. We have tile that's in the basement. We'll just replace this for you because we
Mhm.
want you to feel happy with your purchase."
Yeah.
That's probably the best case scenario if there's a
Let's talk about the worst case.
reasonable seller. So let's talk about the worst case. So sometimes we have a house, old or new, and there's let's say 100-page inspection report. I've certainly seen those. I'm sure you
Mhm.
have too. And there's a list of a limitless. It seems like
You just keep
itemized.
scrolling.
Yeah. I'm on a defect. So then what? So you written in the inspection contingency, the buyer has the right to inspect the property. You have 14 days to complete the negotiations to move on to the next phase. How does the buyer start to decipher and figure out what to do with this long list of defects?
So the negotiation part is they can get bids. They can have contractors come in. Like let's say if it's a roof, they'll have a roof contractor come in and give them a bid, and then you can either negotiate with like they could drop the price of the house. There could be credits. They could fix the roof.
Okay.
I've never seen a full roof replaced, but
I
have you?
have.
Have you?
Yeah,
I
actually, my
never-
own personal house.
Really?
I was selling it. That sucked. Yeah. Yep. Didn't know it was time to be replaced, and the inspector said it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. So it's basically up to the seller and it's up to the buyer. So they need to come together and agree on what do they think is a reasonable fix or
Mhm.
price adjustment or credit to provide the buyer to fix themselves after closing to take care of these issues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've seen that go in a million different directions. I've seen
Right.
some sellers be sticklers and say,
Yeah,
it
me
is what
too.
it is. It's too bad that the electrical system is defective and that the basement is leaking because I've lived here and it's been like that for 30 years and it hasn't been an
Mhm.
issue. And
Right.
sometimes the buyer has to decide, is that okay with me? Or am I going to then go through the process of sending them notice that I don't agree with these defects and that I want out of the transaction?
Mhm.
Or there's the, again, better side of the spectrum, which is it's a reasonable seller, a reasonable buyer. They come together somewhere in the middle with what is defective and what needs to be fixed, and they move forward onto the next contingency.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, anything else in wrapping that you think buyers should know about home inspections? Is there anything they can do to prepare or to, maybe research on their own ahead of time?
Yeah, I'd say taking notes at the inspection, especially at the end when he's going over the summary, just so you don't just rely on just the inspection report because he'll tell you things that aren't even in there, just like you said, maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, just always take a lot of notes and do your research and get that inspection.
Yeah, and I would say too for The other side of things, sellers can prepare for home inspections too. You know, they have the option to pre-inspect the home before putting it on the market. Although that's not something I typically recommend because then they're aware of all the technical defects and then they have to either disclose or fix before putting it on the market. But at least what we recommend for sellers is that take a walk through your house. Do you notice any leaking water or frayed electrical wires or loose deck boards, and take care of some of those obvious things because the inspector is going to find them. And if it's obvious and if it's a quick fix, the buyer is probably going to ask for it to be fixed, especially if it's a safety issue. So might as well take care of it ahead of time so that we're not having to negotiate it in the thick of a short-term timeline to get everything to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's kind of it. That's what we wanted to chat about for home. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah.